सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ श्री गणेशाय नमः। ॐ श्री सरस्वत्यै नमः। ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं परमानन्दमाधवम्। सर्ववेदान्तसिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। After discussing the topic of pramada, after explaining to us how inadvertence leads to the ultimate downfall, and therefore a seeker, even after tattvajnana, even after gaining the knowledge, must pay attention at all times. Even after knowledge, one must be alert, because even a moment of fall will result in the ultimate end. So that Shankaracharya ji had explained in the last section. After explaining that, he takes the topic of what is this pramada. Means pramada is there, one inadvertence or carelessness. What exactly it results into? Means what is it about? Pramada about what? So he explained that pramada for a seeker is to see duality, to see anything other than yourself. And he explained that by saying that the moment somebody sees something other than oneself, that moment onwards, fear begins. To explain this, he said that one who is liberated while living will be liberated after the death of the body, after the fall of the body as well. Jivato yasya kaivalyam videhe sacha kevalaha. 330, verse number 330. But one who is not liberated while living, what do you mean by not liberated? He's got tattvajnana, no? Yes, he's got tattvajnana but has not got that experience of jivan mukti. Why? Maybe some traces of vasanas are still there, manonasha has not yet happened, maybe because of that. Right? So, yatkinchit pashyato bhedam. If such a person sees even a wee bit of difference, bhayam brute yajushrutihi, then the
Yajurveda Shruti Upanishad says that there is fear for this person. This fear is upalakshana for all the mental agitations. Right? It doesn't mean fear is there means only fear will be there. No, no. What it means is all mental agitations are there for such a person. Right? Which Yajurshruti we saw? There are many actually. Taittiriya Upanishad, which is well known. Yada hi evesha etasmin udanamantram kurute atatasya bhayam bhavati. Right? Even a wee bit of difference if anybody makes, then there is fear for such a person. Shankaracharya continues, Yada kada vapi vipaschideshaha brahmaṇi anante api anumatra vedam pashyati atha amushya bhayam tadaeva yad vikshitam bhinnataya pramadat. Now he tells the source of that fear. Where is that fear coming from? He says from that very object which is seen to be different from Brahman, to be different from oneself. That same object will become cause of that fear. So it's not that when I see something else, fear comes from somewhere else. No, from the same object. What you are seeing as not you, that itself will cause fear. Fear means that itself will cause all kind of mental agitations. It can be desire, it can be lust, infatuation, anger or jealousy. All this will be caused by something which is not you. Very interesting. Suppose you make a mistake, okay, and as a punishment, somebody tells you that what you have to do is take a pin, safety pin, okay, and put it inside any part of your body. Okay, safety pin, you have to put it inside. What will happen now? Now very difficult to choose. Why? Because each part is different, but still the whole body is seen as one, as me. And therefore, I cannot distinguish in that way and say that, okay, hand doesn't matter, you put it in the hand. Why? Because the pain is going to be of me only, for me only. So, though the parts appear different, they have different functionalities, but there is a sense of oneness that I feel throughout the body. And therefore, we are never angry on one part of the body or jealous of one part of the body, of our own body I mean. Somebody's body we can be, but our own body we don't have such feelings that, you know, you had idiot fellow. I don't feel anything like that. Sometimes what happens when one particular body part starts to pain a lot, we may for some time feel that, you know, it is creating a lot of problem. And which keeps changing also. Sometimes the headache is so much, then you feel like, you know, I want to keep my head somewhere and, you know, just get rid of it. But actually you don't want to do that. It is out of pain you are saying like that. But there is such a strong sense of oneness, sense of me in the entire body that we cannot put that safety pin into any part. We'll ask, can I put it in somebody's body instead of my body? Why? Because in that body I don't feel any oneness. That is very clearly distinct from me. Now, as we have the sense of oneness in our entire body, that is the kind of oneness we have to feel with the entire world. Anything that we see, it should be seen as me, extension of me. See, that is why sadhus, you know, mahatmas, etc., they are so, what we say, in tune with the whole thing that pain to anything, they take it as their pain. Victory of anyone, they take it as their victory. Joy of any person, they feel that it is their joy. This is a very beautiful thing that we all must understand. It is not that I am not seeing the difference. I can still see the difference, but those differences are not seen to be different from me. That's the point. My hand is different from my feet, but both are me. When I create difference with myself, that this is different from me, then there arises fear. Is this thought understood? So that is what he has said. Yada kada vapi, at any point of time, whenever Esha vipashye, this knower, anante brahmani anumatram api bedam pashyati, sees even a wee bit of difference in that supreme Brahman, atha amushya bhayam tadaeva. Atha, then for such a person, amushya, tadaeva bhayam, then alone is the fear for such a person. From what? Yat vikshitam bhinnataya pramadat. That which is seen to be different from oneself due to inadvertence, pramada, that thing itself causes fear. That is what he has said. So, dvitiyadvai bhayam bhavati. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad also, very well known Shruti. Dvitiyadvai bhayam bhavati. Fear comes from presence of second entity. And yesterday also we saw, in case of our normal fear also, we have fear from things, is always with the second thing. We can never be afraid of ourselves. No, Veji, you are mistaken. I am actually afraid of myself. When I am alone, very afraid. Either it can be because you think that there is somebody, like we saw in the last session, that I feel that in the darkness somebody else is there, that is creating fear, or you are afraid of your own mind. That you don't, see, many times it happens when we do something wrong, then we don't want one-on-one interview with the mind. So we keep running away from it, keep ourselves busy, etc. Why? Because if in case I am not busy, I have to encounter my mind, my intellect, then my intellect is going to tell you what all stupid things I did, which I already know, but I don't want to face. Then I run away from it, which also means that mind and intellect is not me. You see? Because I don't want to be with that thing. That is creating fear for me. So in one way, even that is true. Right? And therefore, what one should not do? He says, Shruti smriti nyaya shatayir niṣṭhē dṛṣṭye atra yah svātmānusandhiṃ karoti. One who identifies with the world, with anything of the world, dṛṣṭye, which is niṣṭhā, which is falsified by Shruti, Smriti and Nyaya. All the scriptures, all the logic, all the experiences are telling us that the world is false. It's not real. Now, if we still have identification with it, saying that this is me, and when we say world, please understand that the world starts from subtle body onwards, everything. Not world means outside the physical body. Even body is part of the world, even mind is part of the world. In this one who identifies, upayiti dukkho dukkha jatam, such a person gets sorrow after sorrow, sorrow over sorrow, more and more sorrow he gets. Like what? Malimluchaha yatha niṣṭhā karta. Just as a thief, a criminal who has done niṣṭhā, what is prohibited. So that way, what is the example here? The example is that the criminal who has done something wrong is never happy. It may appear for some time that, those people who have cheated, etc., are enjoying their life. But actually it is not so. It is only pending sorrow. It will come out at some point of time. You see? And that is why, somehow our movies, etc., have got this point clearly. So many times they will show like this, that somebody cheats and enjoys he actually lives like a king in the entire movie, but in the climax hero comes and kills him. Finally, at least that point they have got it right, that finally that person has to pay. And even if he or she does not pay in this life, he will pay. See, according to the law of the society or nation, he may not be caught, but law of karma, he is already caught. So the moment the person has done anything wrong, suffering has already begun. Why? Because mind is all the time eating that person. Because mind knows, intellect in you, conscience knows very well that you have done something wrong. So it starts to continuously tell you that, you see, I told you not to do, still you did. I told you not to do, still you did. So that is why the person who has done wrong starts suffering, starts to suffer continuously. That is what he says here. In the same way, a person who starts to see something other than himself, who identifies with the world, starts to suffer. Nobody else has to bring any kind of suffering. Clear? Then last shloka that we saw in the session, satyabhisandhanarato vimuktaha mahatvamatmīyamupaiti nityam mithyabhisandhanaratastu nashyet drishtam tadetad yat achaurachaurayoho. He says, now he generalizes that point and says, satya abhisandhana rataha, one who revels into that supreme truth. In that truth, vimuktaha san, being freed, nityam mahatvam atmiyam upaiti, gains, upaiti, attains eternal glory of the self. So what you are established in, that is what you will get. On the other side, mithya abhisandhana rataha, the one who is reveling into false, into the world, nashyet, he will end up destroying oneself. Tadetad drishtam, this is clearly seen where achaurachaurayoho, achaurachaurayoho in case of non-criminals and criminals. So non-criminals which are true, which have done nothing wrong. I was telling you, in the olden days, the kind of punishment which was there was the hot iron rod or shula will be given in their hand, and they have to catch hold of it. And if it burns, means they are criminals. If it does not burn, means they are not criminals. Now don't take it literally. What it means is how they are approaching that. Why? Because if I am a criminal, I know it is. See, it is like lie detector test. There are so many things people say about that lie detector test also. No? But you see, you don't even have to go through lie detector test. You ask somebody, shall I take lie detector test for you? From their answer, you will know whether they have done something wrong or not. The person who has not done anything wrong, he will say, you take whatever test you want. Narco test you take or lie detector, whatever, I don't care. Why? I have not done. And one who has done is afraid. He is afraid of even questions. Why? Because he knows that at some point of time, my lie will come out. Isn't it? So it is how a person approaches. Why? Because satya abhisandhana rataha, one who is established in that truth. Now here, satya abhisandhana rataha means in that supreme truth. But in the example, even the worldly truth, one who is established in, one who is following, is not scared, is not afraid, is not sad. On the other hand, one who has done something wrong will suffer. That is the point he is saying here. Okay. So if you have done an error, if you have done a wrong action, you will suffer. If you have done right action, if you have been alert, supreme bliss is what is the final goal that you will achieve. Okay. So this way, Shankaracharya has taken the thought forward. Now let us see. He continues further. Verse number 334. Yatirasadanusandhiṃ bandhahetuṃ vihāya svayaMāyāmahamasmītyātmadṛṣṭyaiva tiṣṭhet sukhayati nanu niṣṭhā brahmaṇi svānubhūtyā harati paramavidyākāryaduḥkhaṃ pratītam. yatirasadanusandhiṃ bandhahetuṃ vihāya svayaMāyāmahamasmītyātmadṛṣṭyaiva tiṣṭhet sukhayati nanu niṣṭhā brahmaṇi svānubhūtyā harati paramavidyākāryaduḥkhaṃ pratītam. Yatihi, a seeker, yatnashīlavan, one who is putting efforts to attain that supreme liberation, asad anusandhiṃ bandhahetuṃ vihāya. Asad anusandhi. Anusandhi means abidance, connection, strong connection, identification with asat. Asat, unreal. Asad anusandhiṃ. Sandhi means to join. Anusandhi means strong joining. So, giving up that strong identification with asat, vihāya word is there, you see. Vihāya means, means to give up. Vihāya, having given up. What is that? Asad anusandhi, identification with the unreal. Why? Bandhahetuṃ, because that is the cause of bondage. So, having given up the identification with the unreal objects, which is the cause of bondage, svayaMāyāmahamasmī, I myself, aham swayam, ayamasmi, I am this supreme Brahman. Iti atmadṛṣṭyā, with this vision of self, means what? The unreal, instead of saying that this is me the jiva, you say this is me the self. The jiva bhava will create bandha, atma bhava will create liberation. Jiva bhava creates bondage, atma bhava creates liberation. So, instead of identifying with it, know your identity with it. Carefully see what is said. Identification happens between two things. Identity happens with one thing which is misunderstood to be two. Identity and identification, there is a difference. Identification means there are two things which are understood to be one. Identity is there is one thing which is misunderstood to be two. So, between my body and jiva, there is identification. But body and the self, there is identity. Why? Because there is nothing called as body. Self alone is there. There is only one thing. The second thing that is seen is because of misconception, ignorance, delusion. So, giving up the vision of identification, atmadṛṣṭyā tiṣṭhet, remain with the vision of oneself, remain with the vision of identity. I hope now this point is clear. Identification and identity. Okay. Now, you see, because why it is like that? Because the moment I identify with something, I immediately make all other things different from me. Whereas, when I understand my identity with one thing, I understand my identity with everything else also. See, that is the difference. When I say that this body is me, the jiva, then the other body is not me. But when I say this body is the self, the other body is also the self. Clear? So, identification we have to give up. Identity we have to realize. Okay, that is what is said here. Yatihi asadanusandhiṃ bandhahetuṃ vihāya svayam ayam ahamasmi. This thing which I consider to be jiva is actually me. Atmadṛṣṭyā. Iti atmadṛṣṭyaiva tiṣṭhet. One must stay with that vision of oneself. Okay. Then what will happen? Sukhayati nanu niṣṭhā. Nanu. Nanu means, isn't it? Isn't it that this niṣṭhā, this abidance, brahmaṇi niṣṭhā. Say the next word. Sukhayati nanu niṣṭhā brahmaṇi. So brahmaṇi niṣṭhā, this abidance in the Supreme Brahman, sukhayati nanu. It indeed gives you bliss, isn't it? How? Svānubhūtyā. By one's own experience, it gives you bliss. Not by any intellectual knowledge, not by any kind of austerity or any kind of gimmick, but by one's own experience, it gives us that supreme bliss. And then what? Harati paramavidyākāryaduḥkhaṃ pratītam. Harati, it removes. It gives bliss. And what does it remove? Paramavidyākāryaduḥkhaṃ. Avidyākāryaduḥkhaṃ. That sorrow which is the effect of avidya, which is the result of avidya, which is param, which is great, intense. But it removes that great sorrow from our life. Pratītam, which appears to be there. It's also very interesting. Pratītam means which is experienced, means that dukkha is also not real. We have given reality to it and therefore we think, oh my God, there is so much of sorrow, Swamiji. There is no sorrow. The self alone is there. How can there be sorrow? So even that sorrow which we imagine to be is not really there, but even that imagined sorrow it removes. So it gives you that supreme bliss and it removes the ultimate sorrow. This is called as moksha, isn't it? Atyantika dukkha nivritti paramananda praptisya. Right? So, what a person should do? Yatihi vihāya tiṣṭhet. You see, you catch the verbs. Yati should give up and remain. Give up what? Asadanusandhiṃ vihāya. Give up the identification. And remain as what? Atmadṛṣṭyā tiṣṭhet. Remain as the self. Understand the identity. Then what will happen? This kind of abidance in Brahman will give you that supreme bliss and will remove the sorrow born out of ignorance. That is what we'll do. So give up the identification with the not self and abide in that supreme self. Understand that whatever I had identified with, actually I am one with it. I am the self. That please understand. Shankaracharya continues. Next verse, verse number 335. Bāhyaṃnusandhiḥ parivardhayetphalaṃ. Durvāsanāmeva tatastato'dhikām. Jñātvā vivekaiḥ parihṛtya bāhyaṃ. svātmānusandhiṃ vidadhīta nityam. bāhya̱nusandhiḥ parivardhayetphalaṃ. durvāsanāmeva tatastato'dhikām. jñātvā vivekaiḥ parihṛtya bāhyaṃ. svātmānusandhiṃ vidadhīta nityam. bāhya̱nusandhiḥ parivardhayetphalaṃ. Let us understand this. Bāhya̱nusandhiḥ. Now he is giving reason. He has told us to cut the identification, give up the identification and understand the identity. Why should you do that? He is giving reason. He says because this bāhya̱nusandhiḥ, asadanusandhiḥ which was mentioned earlier, now same thing he is explaining as bāhya̱nusandhiḥ. Identification with what is outside. what is not me. So that identification, phalam parivardhayet, it increases its result. What is its result? Durvāsanāmeva. Its result is evil vasanas, bad vasanas. tatastato'dhikām. How does it increase? The vasanas which are thus strengthened by the identification will go on increasing more and more and more. tatastato'dhikām, adhikām, more and more. Further they will increase. So this identification with the unreal world, what does it do? It creates bad vasanas. Now, Vedji, please clarify. What is bad vasana? What is good vasana? Please remember, we are discussing about Brahman. Hold that standpoint clear, then you will understand what is bad vasana and what is good vasana. Any vasana which will take me to the world is bad vasana. Any vasana that takes me to the self is good vasana. We are not talking from the standpoint of dharma. Okay? And there that good vasana, bad vasana will be different. Good vasana will be to follow your duty, etc. and listen to the elders, all these things. Whereas bad vasana will be to do something which is niṣṭhā, prohibited, or kamya in a wrong way, etc. Here we are not talking about that. Here we are saying that anything that takes us away from the self is bad vasana. Anything that takes us closer to the self is good vasana. Now this bāhya̱nusandhiḥ, what does it do? It increases the bad vasanas. Means what? Because I am identified with the outer objects, world, I go out through vasanas, through desires, through thoughts, through actions, through everything. I just keep going out and out and out. And I completely ignore, forget the innermost self. So bāhya̱nusandhiḥ phalam parivardhayet. This is the result that it increases. What? Durvāsanāmeva. It parivardhayet, it increases durvāsanas. tatastato'dhikām, and then they further go on increasing. And therefore, what one should do? Vivekaiḥ jñātvā. Understanding through viveka, through discrimination. What? That this is the self, that is not the self. This viveka is first step. Then parihṛtya bāhyaṃ. Bāhyaṃ parihṛtya. Now what? You give up that external. Give up the external means what? Give up the identification with that external. And then what? svātmānusandhiṃ vidadhīta nityam. Nityam, constantly. svātmānusandhiṃ. Abidance in one's own self. Vidadhīta. Apply this. Apply oneself in this abidance of the Supreme Self. Okay? Very important point I am going to tell, which I have told, not that new point I am telling. When it is said, distinguish between self and not self, the Shastra, the Guru is trying to tell us to end the identification. Then the same Guru will tell that there is nothing which is not self. Everything is self. That also that same Guru will tell. That is called revealing the identity. So first, when it is said that Viveka should be done, Atma, Anatma, Vivechanam, we did one whole big section, long section in Vivekachoodamani of Atma, Anatma, Vivechana, isn't it? The entire Anatma was discussed at length it was discussed. The gross body and the subtle body and the causal body and the 5 koshas and the 3 states, everything was described as not me. Now when it is said that this is not the self, it is to end that identification. But later on when it is revealed that everything is the self, it is to understand the identity. Here also you see beautifully it is said, Vivekaiḥ jñātvā. Viveka is to be done between Atma and Anatma. So that is step number one. First you understand that this is the self, this is not the self. Means this identification which I have got with something which is not me, that has to be ended first. Bāhyaṃ parihṛtya, that you end first, and then what? Svātmānusandhiṃ vidadhīta nityam. Then remain as one's own self. That is what Shankaracharya is explaining here. Okay. So why bāhya̱nusandhiḥ should be given up? Why asadanusandhiḥ should be given up? He has given the reason. Now he gives the process again. What happens when there is no bāhya̱nusandhiḥ and what happens when there is bāhya̱nusandhiḥ? Let us see. Actually, he is explaining when that happens, when you stop identifying with the outer, what happens? That is the next verse. Let us see verse number 336. Bāhye niruddhe manasah prasannata. Manah prasade paramatmadarshanam. Tasmin sudrishte bhavabandhanashah. Niruddhe padavi vimukte. Bāhye niruddhe manasah prasannata. Manah prasade paramatmadarshanam. Tasmin sudrishte bhavabandhanashah. Niruddhe padavi vimukte. Bāhye niruddhe sati. Now, Sati Saptami Prayoga is there in all three padas. Sati Saptami Prayoga, you remember? When the Saptami Vibhakti is indicating time. Bāhye niruddhe sati. When bāhya, outer objective world, niruddha, is kept out, is stopped. Means what? When that identification ends. When that outer world is kept outside. Means it is not superimposed on the self. Identification has not happened. When that is there, manasah prasannata, it results in the peace of mind, purity of mind, calmness of mind, prasannata, manasah of the mind. So, bāhye niruddhe manasah prasannata. When outer world is kept outside, mind is calm. This is such a practical thing, I tell you. In today's world, especially when we are taking everything on ourselves and suffering, this is so beautiful upadesha. Not even upadesha, this is just a fact he is telling. It's a matter of fact he is telling. When you keep the outside world outside, your mind will be peaceful. The problem starts when you take that outside thing inside and then corrupt the inside mind. Keep it outside, then there is no issue. See, even for a seeker to practice, all these things can be very practically practiced. See, means what? Even as a spiritual seeker, we have to do so many things which are part of the world and which many times we say, what is this? It is all disturbing my sadhana. See, nothing in life should disturb our sadhana. Whatever is happening outside, the moment you enter into your sadhana room or you enter into your house or your room, you should keep everything outside. Whatever, okay? It may be good, it may be bad. Please understand, initially the bad things will disturb you. Later on, good things will disturb. Arey, I am so popular, you know. Anywhere I go, people know me. They come and tell, Vedji, we are watching your videos on YouTube. Such a popular person. The moment I start doing my sadhana with this thought in my mind, I won't be able to do it. Whatever is of the world, keep it at the world level. So when they come and say, you know, you are like this, thank you. Don't take it to heart, because it is not true also. That also please understand. Nobody's criticism is true, nobody's praise is true. Why? Because the criticism and praise may be for an individual. I am not that individual. So keep the outer things outside. It's a very beautiful thing. And if we, as a sadhana, if we take it up, no, start to keep things outside. Keep it outside. Don't see it can be anything. It can be my son's problem, my daughter's problem, my family's problem. It can be also of the level of my nation's problem. Is not allowing me to sleep. Okay, you do something about it, but don't let it disturb your sadhana. Outer things, keep them outside. So whenever I am interacting with the outside world, I will deal with all those things. The moment I turn within, all those things are shut out. Window is closed, door is closed, outside things are outside. No entry. You don't have to put board outside your room. Don't disturb. Or you don't get disturbed. Why are you putting board outside? Bāhye niruddhe manasah prasannata. When outside things are kept outside, mind is calm, mind is in peace, mind is happy. Manah prasade paramatma darshanam. He said, now when the mind is calm and quiet, then you will see that Paramatma. As long as mind is not quiet, not pure, how are you going to see that? Tasmins sudrishte, when that Paramatma is clearly seen, bhavabandhanasha. The bondage of samsara ends. See how beautifully he is explaining. He says you keep the outer things outside. Means what? Stop identifying with them. Your mind will become pure. Your mind will become calm. When the mind is calm, you will be able to see that Supreme Brahman, Supreme Self. When you see that Supreme Self, samsara will end. Bhavabandhanasha. There will be destruction of the bondage of samsara. And then what? Therefore, he says, niruddhe vimuktehe padavi. The three padas of this verse are explaining one by one what happens. That niruddhe, that bāhya niruddhe will lead to manah prasada. That manah prasada will lead to paramatma darshana. Paramatma darshana will lead to bhavabandhanasha. And therefore he says, he is concluding in the fourth pada, niruddhe. Therefore, where did you start? That is the padavi. That is the first step to liberation. Or that is the direct path to liberation. Padavi has two meanings. First step or the final step. Both are called as padavi. So one way you have to say that, you see, the whole process starts from there. Therefore it is the first step. Or it says that it is the direct step. Why? Because when you take that step, all other things will happen. Manah prasada will happen when mind is pure. Then the Paramatma darshana will happen. Then bhavabandhanasha will happen. And not that you have to do something. After Paramatma darshana, now you are going with the gun. For what? Bhavabandhanasha. No, you don't have to do anything. It's not activity that you have to do. Now that is done. Now this Paramatma darshana, you are going with the tree, convex and concave lens and finding where is Paramatma. That's not going to happen like that. The action part of all this is what? Bāhya niruddha. Not identifying with the not self. When that happens, all other things will automatically happen. So that niruddhe vimuktehe padavi is the straight path to liberation. Or it is the first step to liberation, whichever way you want to take it, but that is the point. Importance is given to that niruddhe, right? Now, Shankaracharya says, what? Next verse, let us see. Verse 337. Kaf panditas san sadasad viveki shruti pramanav paramarthadarshi janan hi kuryādasato'valambaṃ svātmānusandhiḥ mumukshuhu. Kaf pandita san sadasad shruti pramanav paramarthadarshi janan hi kuryādasato'valambaṃ svapāta shishuvan mumukshuhu. Kaha mumukshuhu, first word of the verse and last word of the verse, they are to be taken together. Who is that seeker who pandita san, after becoming pandita? Pandita doesn't mean scholar here, okay? Pandita means what? After becoming learned. Not only he has learnt, he has listened. Sadasad viveki. He is even able to discriminate between sat and asat. Sat, asat, viveki. One who is able to discriminate between what is real and what is not real. So it's not just that he has gained the knowledge, but he has also applied the knowledge. Shruti pramanaha. Shruti pramanaha, one who considers Shruti to be pramana. This kind of samastapada are called as bahuvrihi samastapadas. Shrutihi pramanam yasya saha shruti pramana. One for whom Shruti, Veda or the scriptures is authority pramana. So he has got learned. He is learned. He is able to discriminate between real and unreal. He also considers Veda to be the authority. Paramarthadarshi, and has gone and experienced that Paramartha, has experienced that Supreme Self. Such a person, janan knowingly, he indeed, asataha avalambam kuryat, kaha kuryat, that kaha question is to be taken here. Who is that person who will, after knowing all these things, asataha avalambam kuryat, will take or will pursue the unreal? Who is that? Who will do that? Nobody will do that. Once, very famous anecdote is there in the life of Pujya Gurudev. One young man eating chewing gum approached Gurudev after the talk, and he said, you know, Swamiji, I could not attend the talk, I came late. I have one doubt. What? How can you give up this world? How can you give up this world? I heard something at the end. How can you do that? So Gurudev noticed that he was chewing that gum. He said, you are chewing gum? He said, yeah, sorry, don't mind. I was meant to throw, but I could not. He said, no, that's fine. What are you going to do with it afterwards? He said, I will spit it out. He said, correct. I chewed the gum of the world, understood it to be not giving me joy. I spat it out. Now, who is that person who, having spat the world out, from that dirt will pick up that gum again and will put it in the mouth? Nobody will. Because he has understood there is nothing in it. Not just heard, not just hearsay knowledge that somebody told me that there is no joy in the world. No, I have experienced it, that there is no joy in the world. Not only that, I have discovered the joy in that Supreme Self. Paramarthadarshi. Now, having done that, who is that person who will again go into the world? See, only when something catches our attention, only when we consider it to be giving us joy, that is the place where we will want to go again and again. Not something we are done with. Not something we are done with. So here, that's what Shankaracharya is saying. Kaf pandita sadasad viveki shruti pramana paramatmadarshi mumukshu janan hi asatha avalambam kuryat. Why? Svapātahetuṃ. Because that asat avalamba, going for that asat, will cause one's fall, downfall. He knows. Why will he do it? Famous story of Srimad Bhagavat, Jada Bharata story. He has gone to that path, on that path, and he has seen where it ends. Why will he do that again? He has seen how the mind, falls. Mind has been raised to such a high level, and then attachment with some small thing also creates such a downfall that he has to be born as that deer and then again take another birth. Once he has gone through it and understood, why will anybody do it? Shishuvat, like a child. Swamiji, what is this, like a child? See, the children, you must have seen, they fall for same tricks again and again. Isn't it? You can fool them again and again on the same thing. Because they are children, their intellect is not that developed. But an intelligent person cannot be fooled like this. So that is the thing. Having raised oneself to that level of self, who will do the suicide of pursuing the unreal? It's called harakiri. Harakiri. Harakiri means killing oneself. Atmahatya. Isn't it? Who will do that? Nobody will do it. Nobody will do it means you also don't do, stupid fellow. That's what Shankaracharya means. Okay, he is not saying moodha, etc., but that's what he means. We know now Shankaracharya. Okay, that is what he says. So nobody will do like that. Now he says there are two things are very contradictory to each other. They will not coexist. Don't now tell me that we Swamiji or Shankaracharya, why not keep that sat niṣṭhā also and asat-avalambaṃ also. You keep both things together. He says, no, that is not possible. You cannot see that sanniṣṭhā, that abidance in the self, is exact contrary to identification with the unreal. It is not something that can coexist. And therefore, one who has got sanniṣṭhā will not go for asat. That's the point that he wants to say. Now he strengthens that point in the next verse by saying that these two things are contradictory, opposite to each other. They will not coexist. Let us see verse number 338. Dehādi samsakti mato na muktihi muktasya dehadyabhimatya bhāvah suptasya no jagaranam na jagratah swapnastayorbhinna gunāśrayatvāt dehādi samsakti mato na muktihi muktasya dehadyabhimatya bhāvah suptasya no jagaranam na jagratah swapnastayorbhinna gunāśrayatvāt. He says, Dehādi samsakti matah muktihi na. Dehādi samsakti mat. Shashti vibhakti matah. Mat means one who has. Shakti mat. Shaktiman. We say, no? So like that, Dehādi samsakti mat. A person who is samsakta, who has got samsakti, attachment with the Dehādi, Sangata, with the body, mind, intellect, with the upadhis. One who has identified with body, mind and intellect, na muktihi, there is no liberation. Muktasya, and for a person who is liberated, dehādi abhimati abhāvah. Abhimati means identification. Dehādi, with the dehādi, abhāvah. There is absence. There is absence of identification with body, mind, intellect for the liberated. Means what? One who is identified with the body cannot be liberated. One who is liberated cannot have identification with body. Two things cannot coexist. He gives example. Suptasya no jagaranam. One who is sleeping is not having any knowledge of waking. Na jagratah swapnah. And for one who is awake, He is not sleeping. Why? Tayoho bhinna guna ashrayatvat. Because both of them are established in bhinna guna, in opposite qualities. There is a contradiction between their guna, their nature. And therefore, one who is sleeping is not awake. One who is awake is not sleeping. In the same way, one who is attached to the body cannot be liberated. And one who is liberated cannot have attachment with the body. So, Sat and Asat, identification with Asat and abidance in the Sat, both cannot happen together. They are contradictory to each other. Okay? One more point we will see in this verse. You see the example. Okay? This is somebody may say this is a far-fetched point, but you see it. What is the first point? He says, Dehadi samsakti mataha muktihi na. Where mataha is in Shashti Vibhakti. Correct? So, he is saying that for the person who is identified with the body, there is no liberation. And you see the example, he says, Suptasya jagaranam na. So, here, supti, sleep, is compared with identification with the body. And jagarana, awakening or being awake, is compared with mukti. Okay? This is one point. If you want, you take it. Otherwise, you leave it. You see, there is one verse in Bhagavad Gita also which shows the contradictory nature of the realized person and the ignorant person. Ya nisha sarvabhutanam tasyam jagarti sanyami. Yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato mune. Towards the world, ignorant is very much awake. And to that wakeful state, jnani is asleep. Whereas in that supreme Brahman to which the whole world sleeps, about which the whole world is ignorant, jnani is awake. So here that supti is compared with dehadi samsakti. Okay? Right. What is the main point? That is not the main point. The main point is contradictory things cannot coexist. So Sant niṣṭhā and Asat samsakti, abidance in the self and identification with the not self, these two things cannot coexist in a person. Why? Because they are opposite in nature. Right. Now what? One more verse we will see. Verse number 339. Antarbahisvam sthirajangameshu jñātvātmanādhārataya vilokya tyaktākhilopadhirakhanda-rūpaha purnātmana yasthita esha muktaha. Antarbahisvam sthirajangameshu jñātvātmanādhārataya vilokya tyaktākhilopadhirakhanda-rūpaha purnātmana yasthita esha muktaha. Who is a mukta? You said for the mukta there is no identification with body. Who is that? Now that is explained. Antaha bahihi, inside and outside. Sthira jangameshu, in the sthira, immovable objects, and jangameshu, in the movable things and beings. Swam jñātvā, oneself knowing what? Atmana adharataya vilokya, seeing adharataya atmana, seeing the self as the substratum of all of that. Or you can also connect it to swam. Swam vilokya. How? Atmana adharataya. Atmana and adharataya both are in tritiya vibhakti, so they will go together. What it means, basically the point is what? One who sees the self as the substratum of inside, outside, movable, immovable, everything. One who sees that one self. One who sees that one self as the substratum. It is called as sarvatma bhava. Sarvatma bhava. Sarva atma bhava. Sarveshu atma bhava. The feeling of the self in everything. The sarvatma bhava is another one central theme of Bhagavad Gita. If you see, in all verses, in all chapters, Bhagavan Shri Krishna brings this topic of sarvatma bhava again and again. Whenever he is explaining jnani, whether it is sthita prajna lakshana or gunatita lakshana or bhakta lakshana, in any place he will bring this sarvatma bhava. Isn't it? In various ways he will bring that. But that is how he does that. Sarvatma bhava, it is exactly opposite to dehatma bhava, you see. Dehatma bhava is identification with deha. Sarvatma bhava is understanding the identity of the self with the entire world. Understanding that the self alone is in and through everything. So he says, Shankaracharya is now saying that having understood that the self is the substratum of everything, inside, outside, movable, immovable, everything, tyakta akhila upadhihi, one who has given up akhila upadhi, one who has given up identification with all the conditionings, body, mind, intellect, sthula, sukshma, karana, sharira, panchakosha, with everything he has given up identification, akhanda rupaha san, remaining of homogeneous nature, yaha purnatmana sthitah, one who sthitah, one who remains as that purna atma, as that infinite self. Why purna atma here? Because purna means infinite. Infinite means that which pervades. One homogeneous. See the choice of words of Shankaracharya. He says akhanda rupaha also and purnatmana also. Look at that precision. He is explaining in the first line that one has to understand that the self is the substratum of everything, inside, outside, movable, immovable, everything. So to explain that, he is telling these two words, akhanda rupaha and purnatmana. Akhanda rupaha, one who is without break. Break means there is no distinction of inside, outside, movable, immovable, etc. And then purnatmana sthita. That is explaining that atmana adharataya vilokya. Atmana adharataya vilokya. That is explained by the word purnatmana. See? So purnatmana akhanda rupaha yah sthitaha. One who remains, eshaha muktaha. Such a person is liberated. Okay, definition. Who is liberated? One who has this sarvatma bhava. One who sees self and self alone and nothing other than self. That is the person who is liberated. Don't measure liberation on the basis of anything else. One who has studied lots of scriptures, so what? Tatakkim, 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 tatakkim. So what? This is one very famous. He is called a Jagat Guru. So what? That is not the proof, litmus test for liberation. What is the litmus test for liberation? One who sees the self alone in and through everything. One who makes no distinction. And as explained in the previous verse, one who is not identified with body, mind, intellect even a bit. Tyakta akhila upadhi. In this verse also he has indicated that such a person is liberated. Right? May by God's grace we also reach that state. Two more verses in this topic are there. We will take them in the next session. Beautiful explanation. Let us conclude. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Harihi Om.